It's Artifacts, now celebrating its 10th year, bringing the arts in the Minneapolis area to you. On this edition, we're going to work. Margot, Ashmore, and David Monson talk about Northeast Arts District. Dylan Skybrook brings us up to date on Dance Tank. Filmmaker Teddy Maki updates us on his science fiction project. And members of American Variety Theater Company go to trial. Plus, our roving reporter Gina Filigenzi is on the bus.
Hello and welcome to the show. The author V.S. Naipaul expressed the opinion recently that perhaps the creative period for the novel and the movie is over. He thinks those art forms achieved their high points in the first half of the 20th century. Others opine that the visual arts stalled creatively during the postmodern era after World War II. And it's not just the arts that seem exhausted. Lee Cullum, in her recent book, Genius Came Early, argues that inventive energy in many fields peaked in the first half of the century, including science, psychology, and statecraft, as well as the arts. Even the high-flying technology boom owes its glory ride to mid-century inventions, and since then it's mostly been value-adding applications. In the arts, most disciplines are divided by corporate structures and competitive funding mechanisms. The imperatives of administrative survival, organizational and funding fads, and even edifice complexes are leaving us with applied art, niche jockeying, bottom-line based programming, and often the triumph of technique over content. Now, retreating to an arts for art's sake movement won't help. Rather, encouraging the impulse of artists to talk with one another, supporting original, even radical formal approaches, and pursuing a new, more engaged relationship with audiences may help remedy the creative exhaustion so many people sense. Oh, and by the way, it was Homer Simpson who pointed out, rock and roll attained perfection in 1974. It's a scientific fact. Now here in our little workshop, we're going to talk with people bringing artists together and forging ahead into a dynamic future. I'll be back with Margot Ashmore and David Monson right after this art quote. Well, and later on we'll get a quote from his nominal competitor for the presidential election. Well, we're going to take a turn now to a topic that's very interesting to those of us who care about the arts here in Minneapolis. Artists started moving into Northeast Minneapolis years ago, certainly by the mid-'80s. And then, of course, Art-A-Whirl very successfully started about 5 years ago. And there are now efforts to create a Northeast Arts District. I have two guests here to talk about that. Margot Ashmore, she's the Art-A-Whirl coordinator, and not incidentally, a publisher. It's nice to have you here, Margot.
Nice to see you.
And Dave Monson, nice to have you here. An artist in his own right and curator of a sculpture garden, as I understand it. That's great. Big doings in Northeast. I mean, Art-A-Whirl obviously goes on successfully year in and year out, but I've been lucky enough to attend at least one meeting, and I know you've had a number of them, to help establish a Northeast Arts District. Just in principle, what's that all about?
Northeast is doing really well right now as far as being a home for the arts. We have at least 3 big buildings where landlords are friendly to the arts. And I guess if you looked at it on a continuum between having absolute blight and despair and abandoned buildings and having yuppie heaven where everything costs too much for the locals to consume, we're at a good midpoint in that continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps could be even better. There's quite a demand for arts spaces. And so we're looking at, how can we preserve and protect the idea that artists can live and work in a mixed-use community, can be totally integrated into a community, and not just be used as a tool to gentrify out or to keep the buildings stable until some other higher-paying use comes along.
And then possibly price out some of those very artists, or at least the next wave of artists who might want to come in and do that.
Right.
Very interesting. Now, Dave, you are a working artist, and in a moment I want to talk about a piece you brought here.
Thank you.
Thank you. What would this mean for not just yourself, but artists in general in Northeast, this sort of effort to create an arts district?
Well, I mean, through the evolution of it becoming kind of a center for studio use, there's already kind of a subculture that has influenced the cultural life of Northeast. gotten involved in Art-A-Whirl, and, you know, many artists, even gotten involved in the Northeast Parade, a number of galleries opening up. And with that kind of impacting of the arts through artist residence and studio use there, I think it's a unique character of Northeast, and I think it should stay there. It's just a matter of, well, you know, as things change, can we?
Yeah.
Artists contribute a lot in terms of teaching at local schools, local parks. Logan Park, for example, has, as part of its neighborhood revitalization plan, the Arts and Culture Committee.
Right.
And that is defined as family-friendly events at Art-A-Whirl and other times throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that arts have contributed to the community. It's not just a matter of taking grants and so on.
Well, Margie, you mentioned earlier space, and that's always important. I mean, you can't create art. I suppose you can briefly in this climate outdoors, but you need a space to do it, and you need to be able to be secure with that space.
Right.
That's one of the central issues here, isn't it?
Yes. A lot of people are doing art in their homes. You know, I also do some work in North Minneapolis, and when Bev and George Roberts opened Homewood Studios, they found that within a 10-block area, there were a lot of people who had been making paper in their basement or had been, you know, having to put their stuff away when it was time to feed the family on the dining room table and things like that. And so, you know, while people can do art anywhere, it does really help to, you know, to further one's seriousness about the art, to actually have a space where you don't have to put it away.
Yeah, and the numbers are quite impressive. We were reviewing a thing we did back in '96. In fact, we'll see a clip in a little while from that piece. I think someone mentioned the first Art-A-Whirl had, what, 150 artists involved and about 18 buildings back then, I think, and it's even more now.
Yes.
What are
Very
some of the
much
numbers?
more.
Can you, is that
You've
at
got
240 artists, and that doesn't even include all the performing artists that are involved in the various events and the things going on at the bars in the evening and so on. So as far as visual artists, artists in spaces, there's 240 and there's 56 buildings.
56 buildings?
Yep, that's those big ones that I mentioned earlier, along with, you know, probably what I said earlier was a little low on the total of, you know, artist-friendly buildings, but...
well, you're referring to places like the California building?
Yes, I was thinking of the three that were at the most recent Arts District meeting, a representative of the Northrop King building, the Thorpe building, and also the California building.
Sure.
You know, those are the buildings where, between management and the way that the artists as tenants have organized, you know, they've really put on a good show. S&M building, because of Hillcrest buying it out for the Stinson Technology corridor, you know, that
was a big issue there.
That was a big issue. In fact, that's part of what spawned the Arts District. Hillcrest was very interested in not totally displacing the arts. And US West, who was one of their big tenants, wanted to expand. That deal isn't sealed yet, but it's going through city process. You know, all right, where do artists go? And actually, Scott Tankenoff from Hillcrest had helped to initiate some of these.
So there's some vision and a bit of a commitment
meetings.
there.
Exactly, there's a lot of commitment there.
Well, and it's always nice to have a working artist on our show of any discipline, performing or visual arts. Dave, would you tell us a little bit about this particular piece? And I know there's an interesting context.
Yeah, I took this from a longer series of works that have been done the last several years in the state of Guerrero, Mexico. And I've been visiting Mexico in the winter now for 15 years. Last May, I did a solo show in San Miguel de Allende of this series of works, which vary between portraits and landscapes and politically related subjects of Mexico, a place that I love dearly. And as I come back here, I find my palette changing, but I thought this is a good representation of the kind of light and portraiture that I like to do down there, where the colors of the landscape come in, the kind of, some of the crisis and stress of the character is there, as you see. Some people are wealthy, some people are barely hanging on.
You can see, at least I get something across the eyes here, a certain set to the jaw.
Right, right. This was not a wealthy man.
No.
The name of it is Reyes Fumando Delicados, which is a fellow named Reyes smoking cigarettes. But,
okay. And you can see the cigarette just here.
Yes,
on the left
and
side
his cigarette patch as well.
Is that true, the patch as well?
Yeah, he was wearing one for a long time, trying to stop.
Okay, but he kept smoking, so he actually got a double dose.
Yeah, he couldn't stop. But,
Muy fumando.
Muy sí, mucho fumando.
Very interesting. Well, thank you for that. Would this be representative or typical of the kinds of work you're doing?
Yeah, though some of it, as you get into landscape related, I use that as kind of a springboard into a little more of an abstract expressionist style, where the image starts to kind of break up and the color and the forms become as important as the subject. And I think there's an element of that's important in all my work, where it's maybe between a specific subject and a way of just looking.
You mentioned your palette changes a little bit. Is that climate and
light? The light in the north changes very much. The intensity of light in Mexico is phenomenal.
Okay.
Even a somber city street there is going to light up more than something in a lower light situation like this. So since I've been back this year, my palette inevitably seems to go toward more blues and blacks and whites, and representing Minneapolis and the way I work up here. But I found that it's very interesting. I've been working more on getting ready for a show that'll be downtown this fall that deals specifically with Northeast, and with the horizon line out my studio window of Northeast, which is populated by the funnels of Youngblood Lumber, who have helped me with the Gateway Sculpture project I founded, and the Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox church steeples in the distance. So you've got this horizon line that varies between inverted V's and V's going down with the steeples. So that's a horizon line that I like, and very related to that kind of the Mill City kind of theme. So that's got me working, I think, is with as much inspiration as Mexico has. So
you just mentioned the Gateway Sculpture Park. Could you briefly describe that for our viewers?
2.5 years ago, an artist in my building on Tyler Street, which is also another good studio building near the Northrop King and Thorpe, looked at this corner lot on 14th and Central, which had been initiated by City Tree Project to start experimenting with different growth trees in the city, and thought it would be also an excellent site for sculpture. She's been involved quite heavily with Franconia Sculpture Park up near Taylor's Falls, and we approached Dan Dickel of City Tree Project, and he thought it was an interesting idea. Well, the next thing we knew, we were curating shows, and we've gotten artists from all over Minnesota, Minneapolis, and some national people showing on that site, pretty much on a shoestring artist run.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So that will be opening a new show concurrent with Art-A-Whirl this
later
May.
in May. Okay, that's great.
May.
Let's take a quick pause right now. We've got just a short clip from a thing that Artifacts did about 4 years ago, taking a look at a lot of Northeast Minneapolis. But here are just a few historical images of some of the arts and culture that have gone on in Northeast, going back to the turn of the 20th century.
Aesthetic dancing and arts and crafts classes were offered as early as 1915 at Northeast Neighborhood House. Chorus, piano, dramatics, little theater, and story hour were offered at the old Margaret Barry House, which closed in 1973. The Loyal Order of Moose, Minneapolis chapter number 38, for years had an acclaimed clown club that traveled the state, cheering the sick and the healthy at hospitals and other locations. The Polonii Club wrote and published books, notably songbooks, to maintain and spread Polish culture. The club also provided scholarships to the Minnesota Symphony.
Well, it's just nice to see some of the rich texture of the arts in Northeast. But here we are, the merry month of May, the year 2000. Art-A-Whirl, can you just give us a snippet about what's coming up? And
Art-A-Whirl starts on May 17th with a film festival at the Heights Theater, 7 o'clock, and they're all Northeast filmmakers or somehow related to Northeast.
Or some of the content at least relates.
Yes. And then the main events, talking about the 240 artists in the 56 buildings, ranging from the big ones we talked about to individual home studios and old storefronts that have been converted. Those events are May 19th, 20th, and 21st. It's in the evening on Friday, 5 to 9, noon to 8 on Saturday, and noon to 6 on Sunday. And to get more information as far as how to do the whirl, there are information booths at the Sculpture Garden at 14th and Central, and also at Broadway and Marshall, and at 29th and Johnson. And there will be hotline information at 612-379-2255, Category 12.
Category 12, so that number again, now this is for Art-A-Whirl.
This is for Art-A-Whirl. at 612-379-2255, extension 12.
Okay, and we're just out of time, but I want to make sure if people want to get involved with the Northeast Arts District, there's also a different number?
Yes, call Heidi Olmec at 612-782-2245.
Okay, thanks. Margot, pleasure
Thank
to have
you.
you here.
Thank you
Keep up
very
the good
much.
work. Dave, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Very much. Well, now we're going to run out to the Camden neighborhood to read our news bits, but while we're running out there, we're going to have Gina Filigenzi taking a bus ride on the Arts and Eats Express, so stay tuned.
Hello, I'm sitting here waiting for the Arts and Eats bus because I am so hungry, and afterwards I think I'm going to catch a little bit of art. Let's see why other people are riding the bus. Are you on the bus to go to a restaurant or see the arts?
Well, I'm going right by the art place, but I'm going 23rd, 3rd Avenue at a hotel.
Okay, do you ever ride this bus for the food or the arts?
No, this is my first time.
How do you like it?
Well, so far so good. First time and on TV.
So are you riding this bus to go to a restaurant or see the arts?
No,
Why are you riding the bus?
to go home.
Have you ever ridden this bus before?
No.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's comfortable.
So are you riding the bus to go to eat somewhere or see the arts?
Yeah, like the bus.
Where are you going?
Got a house. It's my house, you know.
What's your favorite restaurant along this route?
No, it's with parks around. It's so good to see. It's got a bus. It's just good.
So why are you on this bus? Are you going to eat somewhere or see the arts?
No, just I'm going to see my friend over the Franklin.
Have you ever been on this bus before?
No, that's my first time.
So what's your name?
My name's Ron.
And what's the purpose of this route?
That's a tourist bus. We take the scenic route around some of the points of interest around the city, and it helps help people to be more aware of restaurants, cultural centers, and that kind of thing. And I've really seen the city grow a lot. A lot of people have come here from different cultures, all different cultures, all economic backgrounds and futures and presence. And just right here at the corner where we're at, my goodness, I mean, you can't, you don't even know all the different cultures that are here. Anything from Asian to African to Mexican, all mixed together, and it seems to be right here in this area, immediate area, working really well.
Do you have a favorite restaurant along this route?
Yeah, for a long time, the Black Forest Inn right behind us. I think is one of the favorites, but there's coming up some that haven't been here near as long that I think are really pretty good too. Even grocery stores, such a variety.
Do you enjoy the arts?
I do. I like it, and I've got one of my favorites at the Art Institute right now with the Star Wars exhibit. I think it's really interesting.
Well, there you have it, the Arts and Eats Express bus. I really had a good time, and I think the riders did too. I think they'll definitely be back, and I recommend anybody coming down and checking it out. It was great. That's Food for Thought. I'm Gina Filigenzi. Back to you.
Thanks, Gina. We're up here in the Camden neighborhood at Roger Brodine's Lumberman sculpture for this month's News Bits. Trouble at the Vancouver Art Gallery. 90 leaders of Vancouver's cultural establishment recently signed a petition intended for funders calling for the organization's executive body to resign immediately. At issue is a situation involving abrupt leadership changes, complicated by a failed lottery fundraising effort, and compounded by a $250,000 budget shortfall. The Vancouver Art Gallery, founded in 1931, is the largest Canadian art museum west of Toronto. And 40 artists kept it under their hats, or coats, last month at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Checked, a collaborative art show of checked coats, that was the name of it, involved artwork inside the artists' coats, which they checked into the coat room at MoMA. Now, the unofficial show occurred, according to organizers, and I quote, inside the walls of one of the most visible of all art cathedrals, but existed most tangibly inside the heads, or rather the coats of the participating artists, unseen by 99% of MoMA's visitors, unquote. The show's audience basically was the artists and their pals. Now, a little closer to home, Connie Olson one of the original members of the staff at Greater Twin Cities Youth Symphony, gives her final concert May 21st at Orchestra Hall in downtown Minneapolis. Dr. William L. Jones hired Olson 28 years ago, along with James D. Berg, when Gitsy's, as it's often called, when it began. Jones now is at the University of Iowa, and Olson conducted Gitsy's youngest youth orchestra throughout her career. She also taught music for a number of years in the Robbinsdale School District. And that's the Art of Fix News Bits for May 2000. Next up, one of the conveners of Dance Tank. He'll be on the show right after this art quote. Stay tuned. And we're back in the studio. We want to thank the Minnesota Craft Connection for those art quotes from our presidential candidates. And now, identity crises, craft and content, and the place of dance in culture. These and other issues are topics at Dance Tank meetings, and one of the organizers is Dylan Skybrook, who's here to talk about them. Dylan, nice to have you on the show.
Thanks very much.
Now, actually, what Dylan and his Dance Tank colleagues have touched on is something that's, to me, very important, and that is within any given discipline or multiple arts disciplines, there's sort of always room to grow. And I'm fascinated by Dance Tank. Could you just sketch out what it is? What is Dance Tank?
Sure. Dance Tank is an organization, or a meeting rather, organized by Morgan Thorson and myself. It's just a place for people to get together. They can be dancers or choreographers or people who are just interested in dance.
Movement artists of some sort.
Exactly. Or really, or people who just are audience members.
Oh, okay. Well,
are definitely welcome at these meetings to get together and talk about dance and about choreography. We speak about issues of form and content, so more the aesthetic side. And we also talk about the place of dance within culture, and so some of the more political issues.
Right.
You know, why is dance an undervalued art form? You know, what is its place? You know, just what is the place of the body in our culture?
Oh, very. So you're pretty wide-ranging here.
It's pretty wide-ranging, and one thing we've definitely noticed is that we have two kinds of topics of conversation. There's the aesthetic, and then there's the more political. You know.
Okay. And the political is kind of where some of these issues about, like, you know, the body in society or dance in society, perhaps.
Yeah. In a way, they're more practical. I mean, when we talk about the body in society, it's usually more along the lines of why can't we get gigs? You know?
Oh, well, that's very practical.
And so, you know, we look at different reasons why we might not be able to, and one is that, you know, dance is not necessarily the most valued art form.
Right.
You know, certainly, say the City Pages is full of music reviews.
Right, and it's very music
time,
oriented.
right? And that's, you know, a lot of people go see bands, but not as many people.
That's right.
Go to see dance.
And actually, it kind of, I guess the word would be kind of, I resonate with the fact that you call it gigs. I'm an old performing artist as well, and the fact of the matter is, for all your training, for all of your sort of cultural engagement that you're trying to make of your art, you basically have to find work.
Exactly.
And this isn't really taught. Now, I don't know your field. I did not study dance, but I'm guessing that finding work, per se, isn't something that they teach you in the academies or in the dance schools.
No, definitely not. And beyond that, there's no work to find.
Yeah.
And quite the opposite. It's usually you have to pay to do your work.
Right, to find the space, to promote the event, and then you have other overhead costs, paying other artists. And
yeah, I mean, in a way, you know, being in the dance world is sort of the stupidest thing you could possibly do. Because
in terms of like career development.
In terms of economics, it's
Well, speaking of career, though, you know, the Broadway show Fosse was in town not too many weeks back.
Right.
And the naive question on my part. Do most dancers, when they wake up in the morning, say, you know, my real goal is to get to Broadway and do Fosse, or would that be a subsection of people in the dance world?
Almost none of my peers would want to do that.
That's not the goal.
That's not the goal, not at all. It's a different world.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be, I'm trying to think of a good example, but musically, for instance, it would be the difference between doing your own more avant-garde compositions or trying to be like a session man, in
and
a
music's a good
studio
example,
somewhere.
yeah.
You know, I mean, they're really
Yeah.
they're different.
Well, and a
kinds
lot of
things,
popular
yeah.
music now are sort of created bands, and the indie movement,
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's still there on the grassroots, but it's not being celebrated out in Hollywood or New
Right,
York, particularly at the
right.
corporate level.
Right.
So kind of similar to what you're saying in the dance world.
Right. Although indie, of course, got kind of bought. And,
For what- yeah,
you
for a
know,
while.
and
They had that run.
assimilated, and we'd like the same thing to happen to us. We'd like to sell out, but nobody's buying.
That's what motivated you? I know Morgan was on the show some months back. We didn't talk about Dance Tank. Were you sitting around as dancers and saying, we should really talk?
Yeah. Well, one thing we thought of is that choreographers are fairly isolated. And both Morgan and I have had experience in other cities. I lived in San Francisco for a long time. She lived in New York a long time. And we felt like there wasn't enough dialogue happening, both just personally in between, dancers and choreographers together, and also just in terms of, the dialogue of where art was going, where the dance art was going towards. We felt that not enough people know history. If you look at like jazz guys, they sit around and they talk about, what about that one time in 1964 when Miles put out that one side, and they know what's going on.
Yeah.
Or in visual art, people definitely
It's
know
all about
history,
movements.
right? They definitely know, like, there was the Cubists, and then there was these guys, there were the Futurists, and blah blah blah, and so they understand where they fit in to that moment.
Right.
Whereas in the dance world, people are still saying modern dance as if it was modern right now. But in fact, the term modern dance at this point refers to a historical movement that was over probably in the 60s.
Yeah.
And then we have postmodern, and then there's performance art that gets in the mix, and there's all kind of things, and we really felt like we wanted that dialogue to be happening.
In terms of coming together, this happens about every 6 weeks or so from something you said?
It's about every 6 weeks,
Okay,
or
well, that's
depending
good.
on
Take it
when
a
me
step
and
at a
Morgan can
time.
get it together, because we're both very busy. So.
Well, and that's good, though.
Yeah.
It's nice to know you're busy. But at these events, who's coming? I mean, just sort of categorically, who's showing up? Are you getting kind of a cross-section of the dance world?
We have had quite a great mix of people.
Yeah.
There's usually like 10 to 15 people show up.
Does that include some veterans, some folks that have been working? Because we do have some great folks that have been.
Absolutely. John Munger has come several times, and he's been in the dance world here for a very long time. Judith Brenningber.
Yeah.
Also, we have Dave Moore from Three-Legged Race, who's not a dancer, who's more of an administrator, producer.
Well, that's right. In fact, Morgan did a project with him a couple months back.
Right, and I am in the future as well.
Oh, great.
So yeah, a lot of people have been coming up. We've gotten some very young folks who actually aren't choreographers at all, who are just coming because they're curious. It's a really nice mix, and I'd really encourage anyone who is interested to stop on by. And
Well, tell you what, let's just interrupt right now, because I know there's a phone number if people want to get in touch with Dance Tank.
Sure.
Yeah, we can get this up on the screen, but could you rattle it off?
Sure, they can call 612-879-9254.
Okay, and then at that number they can find out a little bit more when the next Dance Tank.
Right, and a great thing would be to leave your name and number.
Okay.
An address, and we'll put you on our mailing list.
Oh, that's great.
And we'll send you a card.
I think I'll do that, because I think efforts like Dance Tank are very important, and I would encourage other disciplines to do that as well. As you were just coming into the studio, I know you mentioned you had at least one gig a while back that kind of relates to our earlier segment about Art-A-Whirl. You actually did had a dance performance at one of the studios in Northeast at Art-A-Whirl.
Right.
Describe that a little bit. What was kind of the context of that, and how were you able to express yourself as a dancer there?
Well, that was a great gig, actually, because it was in Doug Padilla's old Art Jones gallery in the S&M building, and there's art in the space. There's stuff on the wall. There's sculptures around, and it's a dirty warehouse floor, and so there's a way in which it's such a rough and tumble environment in terms of dance that it was really fun for us. And I mean, they had a million chairs set up, and
how big an ensemble are you talking about? How many?
This was a trio with one live musician, and we just fit the dance into the space however we could, dancing around the sculpture and everything else. It was a very fun
that leads
gig
me to
for
think
us.
is that I know that in the music world and to some extent in the visual world, in the Twin Cities, salons are kind of coming back. That people are opening up new and different spaces to show off those art forms. It would seem to me from what you're saying that dance could work in sort of non-traditional spaces as well.
Oh yeah, in fact, I mean that happens quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
I think
okay.
We've performed in many strange spaces. Hijack, I don't know if you're familiar with them. Hijack is a choreographic duo in town, and they perform everywhere. They perform, outside and in different warehouse spaces.
Okay,
and
very interesting.
Yeah, so it's definitely happening. We performed in the Walker Galleries before.
Do corporations ever bring you in to do things that...
Not me.
Not you, but
yeah.
Maybe it's not unheard of in the dance world?
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not. Yeah. But again, there's a real difference between commercial gigs and the gigs that we're trying to create. Like the kind of things that I create, I don't know if the corporations necessarily want.
Well, how would you describe your art?
Well,
or the main part of it,
sure,
anyhow.
I'll try. Although I'm dance-based, I consider myself more of a multidisciplinary theater creator in a way, really even more than a choreographer, although I am a choreographer. So yeah, I make multidisciplinary work. There's dance and there's text, and I make visual images on stage, and sometimes there's songs.
Sounds very dynamic.
I hope so. Yeah. I spend a lot of time in San Francisco where almost no one in the scene there only dances.
Okay.
There's always something.
Multidisciplinary.
Yeah, there's always something going on. And definitely very influenced by performance art. I grew up going to lots of punk rock shows and that kind of thing, and so my aesthetic is, if I had been more musically inclined, I would have been in a band.
Okay.
But instead, I'm making this...
Made the kinetic move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so my aesthetic is much closer to that. It's very athletic. It's, we crash around a lot. We fly in the air, we crash into the ground.
Shades of that punk scene maybe a little bit.
A little bit. In my past. Yeah. I'm post-punk these days.
That's
but,
right. But shades, I see what you're saying.
At the same time, I think that, my movement is, it's elegant, and there's line, and there's shape and momentum and all that kind of thing.
Well, Dylan, we are just out of time, but I'm urging our viewers, especially anybody that thinks about and cares about dance, pay attention to the kinds of things you're talking about in Dance Tank. Dylan Skybrook, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to find out more about that. Well, now, filmmaker Teddy Maki is back, this time with his executive producer. But first, celebrating our 10th year of television, here's an artifact from 1993. We went on location to see some of the restoration of the Orpheum Theater in downtown Minneapolis. Stay tuned. In this part of the show, we're going to check out what they're doing with the renovation of the historic Orpheum Theater in downtown Minneapolis. We're going to go behind the scenes and beneath the scenes and even briefly a little bit above the scenes. Let's go check out what they're doing inside. Here in the lobby, there was a decorative paint crew working on the dome and two arch-shaped panels to either side of the dome in the center of the lobby. They're busy applying a chemical called sizing to the dome area. Sizing, we are told, is like a mixture of varnish and glue that is used as an adhesive to hold the decorative leafing in place. Well, we're here at the Orpheum with Mike Gamwell, who's the foreman of the paint crew.
Well, our company is responsible for all the decorative finishes in the entire theater. So anything that looks really decorative, we've done.
You guys did it.
Yeah. Well, Phil, right here, these panels were hidden at one time with a particle board type cover on the front that was painted, and they discovered these. So we've brought them back into shape with the plaster and then given them a decorative finish. It's a Pompeian design taken from, of course, Pompeii in the early Roman days, a lot of the elements, and we tried to keep to a color scheme that would portray that, historically. There's a lot of, the gold is all leaf work, and the silver is leaf also, and then of course the rest is painted.
One thing that we notice is just about everywhere we go in the theater is plaster. There's a lot of ornamental plaster. In the lobby area, we see how some particular plaster enrichments were restored, as well as the restoration of 2 of the largest pieces in the entire theater.
Originally what happened in 1947, they had a renovation project, and they dismantled the original enrichments that went all along the entire lobby area here. Our biggest problem was trying to find a casting or something to go by that would match what we had on a picture.
The original plaster castings looked like this old metal casting that was discovered in back of the theater by Bruce. This metal casting was used as a mold to make the new plaster castings. They needed 66 of these castings for the lobby. This is how they are made.
If you can just imagine that piece of steel sitting in a big box and then pouring rubber over it, removing the steel, you have the negative of what you want to cast. So then all you have to do then is start applying the plaster inside here, lay your fiberglass tape all through this area, and as soon as it sets up, take it out.
The largest castings to be restored were these 2 fixtures on either side of the main stage. During the 1947 renovation, there had been curtains put up above the organ lofts right where these fixtures were. Bruce explained to us that they had to cut the fixtures in order to make room for those curtains.
They took a hatchet and saws, and they started right here, and they cut all of this off. All of this was all gone. All you saw was the original form here, part of the shield, part of these kumquats down here, part of them, they saw this, but all of this was gone.
And welcome back. You are viewing Artifacts. I'm Phill Lindsay, and I want to say that was nice work by the crew back in '93. It was kind of fun to get the inside scoop on that renovation of the Orpheum. Well, my next guest is filmmaker Teddy Maki. He's here with an update again on his movie project. Hey. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Regular viewers of Artifacts will remember that we've had Teddy on a couple of times before. Since last year, he's been working on a movie project, Relinquishing Hantavanos. And you've got big news for us.
Yeah, we just got into the New York Independent and International Film Festival with a 26-minute preview of the film that we had.
That is so cool. Now, when is that festival?
July 7th through the 17th.
Okay, so you got a lot of work between now and then.
Yeah, we have a ton of work to do because we just recasted one of the main characters.
Wow.
And most of the stuff that we had shot, of course, was his stuff.
I was just going to say, so now you got to go back and kind of
redo the whole film.
Oh my God.
Pretty much. But that's, it was good practice to make this 26-minute trailer.
Well, actually, it's very interesting because, again, you were nice enough to send us a clip we're going to see in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And our director, John, and I were looking at that, and, I mean, your production values are just zooming right up there. I mean, I remember 8 months ago or whenever we first had you on the show, I mean, it was stunning, it was gripping, strong stuff. And now you're just zooming up there. I mean, the pacing, the power, the music,
we're learning.
The cuts, so you're having fun too.
Oh yeah, it's having been.
Now this New York, Independent and International Film Festival is kind of a big deal.
It's like the biggest festival in New York, actually, and
wow.
I think they show about 200 movies. The opening night's at Madison Square Garden. Wow. And last September, 10,000 people went to the opening night, so it's like a really well-known thing in town. And you pay to get into the festival. You have to pay $300 to get in because it's a marketing festival.
Okay.
So they invite all these other producers and people who want to have money for films.
Yeah, which is not incidental to your interest, right? I mean, you're going out there and you will have just sweat like you've never sweat before to get this 6-minute thing together. And you're sitting out there, and your 20 minutes is up on the screen. What are you hoping happens then? I mean, who do you hope walks over and talks with you?
Oh, geez, somebody that's a sci-fi nut. That's like from a small company that would be interested in looking at more work. Because our goal is to have a new 20-minute trailer for when we go out there, and then have just a whole new package. And so if somebody does come up to us from at any level of the scale, we'll have something new to show them so they know that this is really a work in progress.
Right.
That we're not stopping because we don't have very much money to make the movie.
And you're hoping that there'll be somebody there to maybe invest in your show.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty great. And I think something you mentioned to me on the phone a while back, this is the first time a Minnesota film has been part of this in quite a while.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how many years it was, but I heard through IFP that it's been quite a long time.
Independent Film Project North.
Yep.
You're referring to, yeah. Anyway, which is a great service organization to help film producers and
definitely
projects
and then
here.
the film board.
Then the film board. That's right. How did they hear about you, or how did you hear about them? How did you get into this festival?
At the festival?
Yeah.
Excuse me. I entered into this Laura Napor film grant, and it was a script competition about 7 months ago. I didn't get the grant, but they recommended the New York Film Festival to call me to ask to get an update on my movie and to ask if I could enter anything into their festival.
So it's actually a referral.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to feel good right there.
Yeah, that was really cool.
First that they would do that, second, and that the film festival people actually called, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then what, you sent some stuff out?
Well, he gave me a week. He said, I want you to enter this festival, but you have till next Friday to turn it in. So we didn't have a 26-minute trailer. We had all broken up scenes, and it was sort of a thing, but it was nothing the way it is now. So we just went nuts that whole week.
Now, when you say we, who's we? Who are you working with? What kinds of people are you working with?
It would be the actors.
Yeah.
It would be
bless their hearts.
Yeah. The executive producer, Jeff Faber-Staley.
Okay.
And Maren Johnson, who acts, and then she also does other stuff in the movie.
So your whole production team, I mean, it's just, you went into full press mode here and made it happen, got it out there, and they liked it enough, and they said, you're in.
I know, they're crazy enough to like it.
And I'll bet not long after they said, and send the $300.
Yeah, well, we had to send it together.
Oh, okay, so that was out there already, and they said, yeah, you're in.
But you got the money back, which was really neat. If you didn't get in, they'd still send you back the $300, and then they'd also send you a written critique of your work.
Even if you weren't in?
Yeah, by their jury panel.
Well, that's very supportive.
It is.
But you made it in.
Yeah, luckily. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Do you know the venue out there at which your piece will actually be seen?
I don't, but they have 4 or 5 different theaters in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it runs for 10 days.
Wow.
And it's just, I think it runs probably starting at 1 and ending at midnight. Like, film's just going constantly.
Congratulations, that's very exciting.
Thank you, right on.
Now, you've got other plans besides the fact that you've recast this one character. You were telling me that you've got something lined up for this summer where you're going out on location for a big...
Yeah, we're switching the locations of the movie. Before it was all like the Minneapolis-St. Paul area.
Yeah.
And now we're, there's a certain city called Atwana, which is where 3 of the main characters live, and that's going to be out in the Badlands. And we're going to travel out there with hopefully 30 or 40 people and hike down kind of in the beds with canvas tents and posts and basically build like a small town, a desolate town of these tents and these people that wear loincloths and kind of more like the caveman days, and then film the scenes out there. And it's probably going to be black and white.
It sounds a little bit like me when I camped in the Badlands, actually. Those were earlier days. Why don't we take a break now and actually see a clip that you provided. Now, this is sort of right up to date. I mean, this is what you've got kind of now, but there's more to come, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so anything to set up here for people?
Oddly enough, the first time that I was on this show, I showed the same clip, but totally different, filmed in a totally different style.
Very different, yeah.
So this is the new way that it's filmed. And what it is it's Oricon, the star of the movie, talking to his father, who plays a god, and he's just complaining about how he has to rule this system and how the sadness that he's feeling, he can't handle it.
And his father is the disembodied voice that you hear. Let's take a look at this right now. Clip from Teddy Mackey's film.
Speak. Beings of old, hear my cries. I can take no more of this. You've locked me inside such a horrible state. Why must you do this, Father? Stay true, my son. The ruler has patience. A trait which you yet to learn. Father, please! I cannot handle these burdens. You've chosen me to rule over a world that feeds off of pleasure. It is too painful for me to watch. Keep your ground, son. Before long I'll be gone, and you will take my throne as leader of the whole Antolian star system. You must be ready for this task. Before long, that's an eternity in my mind.
Silence! No longer listen to you, please, Orca. This is what I told you to do. Now go and do it! When the time is right, you may return home. Till then, rule this planet Hantavanos, continue the test of sadness, and complete the test! In the end, everything will work out.
Fine, Father. I shall do what you say. Goodbye, Father.
He is just a boy, Lord asks of you. Oricon cannot yet understand the magnitude of his worth to our people.
I know this, Gargoyle, my old friend. I know.
Well, very cool. That's strong. So, are you happy?
With the clip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the clip and
the film?
progress to date?
Yes.
It keeps evolving. I mean, it just keeps moving
It keeps
ahead.
going, and it was nice to put this together to actually see how the whole film looked, and then now I can go back and look at something and say, oh God, that was horrible, or this was good, or and that's why we're refilming it, and that's why I did this. I think in the first place was just to get a gamut of where we're at right now and where we need to be.
Now, it's not a minor thing to rewrite it and kind of drop out a previously main character.
No, it's pretty major.
So why? How did that? What made that happen?
I just the guy that was in it, Chuck McKenzie, who's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's like the sweetest person that I've ever worked with. Fantastic, and he was a really good actor. But he was just too sweet for the part.
Okay.
I wanted somebody more evil and daring. And him and I just agree that he really doesn't have an evil bone in his body, which is great for a comedian. Like, I mean, he's more of a comedian than anything else. And so that's what made me sort of decide that it's just, from the look of the character of Kazimov, I want the viewer just to be scared of him.
Well, and just the clip we saw, too, there's power, there's energy, there's an intensity.
Right.
And I'm sure that it's not all evil intensity, but there's a lot of intensity in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've also added a love story?
Yeah, and there's a love interest that was in the original script that I took out because I didn't want to have a love interest in the movie, but now I want it back in again, I guess you could say.
So something's changing your personal life? Or
yeah, exactly.
Oh, is that right?
No. Her character name is Zulanda, and she's actually a dream. And in the beginning of the film, she gets brought back to life out of the earth, out of the mud. And this character, Atrania, brings her back to life and sends her on this mission to find love, because Atrania, who is Oricon's sort of slave, can't experience what love would feel like. And so throughout the film, this character, Zulanda, appears in certain dreams, like Acrelius, the main character. He'll dream a lot or look in the mask, and all of a sudden he'll be sharing his visions or running down places with this person that he's never seen before.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the film, they meet in real life.
Yeah. So so they share kind of an approach to, I don't even want to say the world, the universe through dreams. I mean, they each do that, and they're both kind of on a quest.
Right.
Separate quests, but they meet somewhere in the mix there.
Yeah, so it should be an interesting...
Oh, it sounds interesting.
I've never done a love story before, so it'll be fun to see
that sounds
how
great.
it turns out.
Now, do they end up in that Badlands location for a while, too? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Badlands are going to be matched with the Minnehaha Falls.
Yeah.
And then some waterfalls up north.
Okay.
And then the cliffs.
Yeah.
In the North Shore.
Along Lake Superior?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think all that will mesh together really well. And then a taconite plant up in Eveleth, Minnesota.
Well, that's otherworldly.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really...
So there's still some Minneapolis scenes or locations in
yeah.
this sort of thing.
Definitely.
Is continuity difficult? I mean, to keep it in your brain, or is this all written down somewhere you can keep going back and referring?
It's all, well, the shooting of the script I have all written out. You know, every single shot, or as far as being a close-up or what happens in the shot, is all written out. But all this new stuff is just, I'm just storyboarding it, and it's all new. So
fascinating.
It's taking a ton of time to do it, but it's.
Because I'm interested in sort of the process of what you're doing as well as the story and the content, I just want to ask, how is support coming for this? I mean, we're not talking about a major Hollywood budget here, but we're talking some real money. Mm-hmm. How are you doing on that? Are you getting some local support? I know you're hoping to find something out in New York.
Yeah, as of now, it's pretty small. My family has been helping me out with equipment and stuff like that, which is fantastic.
Right.
I've been working paycheck to paycheck for it.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Staley has been helping out from time to time on the special effects.
He's your executive producer.
Right.
Yeah.
And so between the three of us, we're sort of getting this thing going. But
Yeah.
to get out to the Badlands, we definitely need a grant
Yeah.
of some sort to do it. It's
Right.
going to be about at least a $5,000 shoot
I
for a
would think,
week.
yeah. And I know from something else you said you got some special effects that are coming online too that I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be.
That sounds good.
We're going deep into the world of special effects.
Well, Maki, tell you what, another few months, let's have you back, get the next update.
Great, that'd be
Good.
excellent.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
See you.
Well, next up on the show here, we've got some young people from the American Variety Theater Company, and they perform all the time on Broadway. That's West Broadway in North Minneapolis.
One day, I was outside, and I heard a terrible noise coming from one of their houses. It was the house of Fravel. Unfortunately, not one of the brightest of the pigs. He had a house made of straw. I thought perhaps he was having trouble with it blowing over again. This had happened sometimes when the weather got bad, but when I got there, I just couldn't believe what I saw. The big, bad wolf blowing down poor little Fravel's house.
I can't believe they would say it was me. I mean, the pigs. We met on a carnival cruise. We're the best of friends. Grandmother Vera, I love her so much. We have tea every Sunday while knitting our Afghans. Papa Bear, you know we golf every Sunday also, shortly after Grandmother and I's tea. There's no possible way I would harm any of these people. I am a vegetarian.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard testimony from character witnesses as to my client's relationship with them. Mr. Wolf, Mr. Very Content Wolf, has had his good name ruined with the title of Big Bad. He has a friendly relationship with all of the people he's accused of hurting. He in no way wishes to harm them or to eat them. There's no evidence to this other than the word of that girl, Mary, a spoiled child who does not get her way and wishes to find someone to blame. You know the truth. My client is innocent. Thank you.
Thank you. Respected members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen, my client is just a little girl. Mr. Wolf is much older and by nature very sneaky. It is evident that he has tricked many of his so-called friends into believing his stories. Have you ever, ladies and gentlemen, heard of a wolf who is a vegetarian? The simple fact is, wolves eat meat. Little girls, grandmothers, pigs, and yes, even bears. We believe the wolf was indeed a big bad wolf, has used this poor little girl to get to all of the others for dinner, or maybe even a snack. He got caught and is trying to get out of it just like a sneaky big bad wolf. The wolf is guilty. You must find him guilty. It is your duty to keep a menace like this off the streets so our children can be safe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. What you're watching here are some actors from the American Variety Theater Company, and with me is Janelle Rannick, who is not only the director of this company, but you wrote the show.
Yes.
Now, what was it we just saw? What was that from?
This is a cutting from a piece called Once Upon a Trial, where the big bad wolf is on trial, and also the little girl, Mary, who's kind of the girl in every story, in Little Red Riding Hood, in Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And it takes place, some of the other characters in the story, there's, of course, Grandmother, there's Norm the Woodcutter. Mm-hmm. The judge is Snow White.
Oh,
the whole trial.
Snow White judges all this.
Yeah.
Well, let's quick get introductions. Who is this very contented wolf here?
Basil Scott.
Hey,
I
Basil.
play VC Wolf.
I'm Dominique Jones, and I play the attorney Cinderella.
I'm Melissa Belfry, and I play Jack B. Nimble.
I'm Sierra Dadovich, and I play Mary.
And you guys did great. I mean, this is a nice show. Now, this is a show that's just closed recently.
It just closed. It's a good example of the things that we do at AVTC this summer. We have a show coming up called Tales from the Hood, which is going to be different fairy tales changed around. We actually may be bringing this one back, possibly in a different space.
I like this piece, all right.
Yeah, this is great. We have a show running through May 13th called Getting Out by Marcia Norman, and that's for teenagers. It's a very mature play which deals with some very serious issues.
And at least one or two people from...
Yeah, Dominique and Basil are in that
great.
show.
And the costumes were great. Who did the costumes?
Costumes were done by Stephanie Harmon, and
They're
she
very nice.
did an incredible job with Teresa Dawes helping, and a lot of people, parents helping with the costumes.
It's a team
too.
effort.
Absolutely.
Janelle, if people want to find out more about American Variety Theater Company, a phone number?
Phone number is 612-521-4439.
Great. Thank you, one and all.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Bill.
it. It's nice. And we'll be back right after this. Lots of great things going on here in the Minneapolis area. At this point in the show, I do like to mention some of the accessible performances that are available. Children's Theater will be presenting Pinocchio, and they'll have a couple of performances that will both be audio described and interpreted with American Sign Language. May 10th, they'll have a 10 a.m. show, and then May 12th, a 7:30 p.m. show. That's Pinocchio at Children's Theater. And then Theater Unbound at the People Center, they'll be doing Broken Pieces. That's the name of the show, and that will be both audio described and interpreted American Sign Language. May 21st, that's a Sunday, 2 p.m. show. Also, in the middle of this month, it is National Preservation Week, and they've got a great theme this year. It's exploring the history of Minneapolis' neighborhoods, and they've got all kinds of walking tours and presentations. Stevens Square, there's a walking tour. A history of North Minneapolis, a history of Tangletown, history of the Loring Park neighborhood. By the way, State Representative Steve Trimble, who knows quite a bit about Loring Park, he'll be leading that presentation. Future of the community libraries, discussion led by Amy Ryan, who's with the Public Libraries here in Minneapolis, and the Milwaukee Avenue Historic District. There'll be a walking tour of that. And of course, the big Preservation Awards ceremony, May 18th, and that'll be at International Market Square. So they always do a nice job there, Preservation Awards. Last summer, actually, July of '98, we had Janet Lenius on. She was on to talk briefly about the Northeast Info Line, which is a number you could call and find out about activities and events, including some arts-related activities in Northeast. Well, they've changed their name, and I just want to mention the fact that it is now the Twin Cities Info Line. Same phone number, 612-379-CALL. And this actually kind of just as I was getting ready to come over here to tape the show, there's going to be a Festival of Stained Glass, a month-long series of programs celebrating the history and tradition of stained glass as an art form in sacred spaces, sponsored by the Friends of the Basilica. Now, that's the Basilica downtown Minneapolis. They've got lectures, tour, and workshop. You get to go over to Gay-T Glass, see their facility there, and there's a great glass tour, which will include the Basilica of St. Mary, Westminster Presbyterian, Wesley United Methodist, the First Universalist Church, and the chapel at Lakewood Cemetery. If you've never seen that, that'd be worth the price of admission right there. So that's coming up, I think it's a month long, so check that out, Festival of Stained Glass. Well, next month, we're going to have a great lineup. Amongst guests will be artist Ken Wenzel and performer Leslie Orr. And if you've seen anything on this edition of Artifacts that you'd like to find out a little bit more about, call our hotline, 673-2234. I'm Phill Lindsay. We'll see you next time.